1, number 3. Grass River 3 R's. Grass River Railroad. Why they didn't do G?
this. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to rumble? Anyway, tonight it's Who's Big Bill talking to? And we're talking with Mr. Baronic, Bill Baronic, a.k.a. the Track Planner. You guys have seen him before on our show. We've talked about operations. We've talked about track planning. We've talked about many, many, many things. No, we haven't talked about the birds and the bees, but that's not what we're going to talk about tonight. I asked Bill Baronic to come on tonight because recently in the Model Journal magazine that came out, Bill had wrote an article which I thought was very interesting. And I asked him to come on and talk about it in more detail other than in the article. You can go read it in Model and Journal magazine that came out. It's a very interesting article, but the article pertains to final things. You know, it's that subject that none of us like to talk about. It's death. Eventually it's going to happen. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And we can't, the last time I checked, whenever I saw a funeral procession, I never saw a U-Haul trailer behind the hearse and the guy taking it with him. So Bill's going to talk about that and what we as model railroads, because this community is getting older and older. Yes, we're trying to get the youth in there, but we're getting old. There's no doubt about it, you know. So Mr. Baronic has written a good article, and he's put together a nice little presentation, and hopefully buckle up. It's not that bad. It's eventual. So, you know, maybe not tonight, but eventually it will happen. Without further ado, Mr. Baronic.
Thank you, William. You know, this will be a little different from what you usually see me on here doing, track plans and things like that. I've got a fair amount of experience in this area through three things. One, my business that I used to own, my model railroad club I belonged to out here, and then I had a brother who was a terrible, terrible, serious hoarder. And with those three experiences, I probably learned about as much as I want to know about model railroads and what happens when somebody passes away. What I'm going to do is the first half of the show here, hopefully the first 30, 35 minutes, just going to be a slide presentation to give you an idea of why I think I can opine on this subject. And then I'll, in the second half of the show, not 30 minutes, but the second half of the presentation will be things that I'm going to suggest to you guys that you really, really, really need to be thinking about, because I've been through this many, many times in different situations, and Bill's exactly right. It's something that people don't want to talk about. So what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to do a screen share here. And can everybody see that? Or Bill, does everybody see that? Okay. What we're going to do here, this is the same title that was in the magazine where I said, sorry, you can't take it with you. And I think that speaks for itself right there. The next thing, this is what I'm going to talk about tonight. Why I think I qualify to opine about this subject. I think I'll be fairly convinced I probably can talk about it reasonably intelligently. My brother's estate, which was one of the worst cases of hoarding they've seen in eastern Nebraska. When I was a state coordinator for our Northern Colorado Model Railroad Club out here, then there's a thing I like to talk about called SABLE, S-A-B-L-E, and that's a disease almost every model railroader has. And we'll talk about that. Then I'm going to talk to you about what you need to do now. Not next year, not in a couple of years. These are things you need to think about doing now. Okay, why am I qualified to talk about the subject? During my professional career, I spent 42 years in the jewelry business, in the retail side of the jewelry business. I managed a family business for over 25 years there. I developed a appraisal consulting service where I did appraisal work for customers. And when I retired, I had approximately 4,000 appraisals that I had done. That was individual appraisals, not individual items. There was tens of thousands of items, but I had approximately 4,000 appraisals that I had done for clients and that. I worked with numerous insurance companies where if a customer of theirs had lost a piece of jewelry, the insurance companies trusted me, and I helped them out to get the customer squared away, the insurance customer back into the position where if they lost something, get it back, things like that. Then I also, for 2 or 3 banks in Omaha, I was an advisor for the banks. Though my brother's estate, and this is quite a subject here. My brother was, first of all, a model railroader, a pretty serious model railroader, and actually a pretty damn good model railroader. He also was a pretty serious collector. He was a hoarder on an absolutely massive scale, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. And he had a little bit of money. Now, if you put those 4 things together, and you can have some serious problems. Hoarding is a disease that I've done a little study on it, and I think it's mental. We're not 100% sure. Usually it happens to be, my brother wasn't a hoarder when he was younger. This all happened after his wife and a daughter and his son passed away. And usually when you read about hoarders, something happens in their life and they start doing that. Starts out small and then it gets bigger. And as you'll see here in a little bit, what happened to my brother. This all added up to the worst case of hoarding that was seen in eastern Nebraska in decades. The show Hoarders that some of you might watch on TV, they actually got a hold of me and wanted to know if they could get involved in this because they knew the size of it. The problem, I did not do it. I wouldn't have done it anyway, but when I got talking to them, the problem was at that point, my brother was in a nursing home. And then they said, oh no, we're not interested because the show revolves around helping people and that. Well, it was funny what they told me. They said, I had the stage, I didn't have the cast. I didn't have the actors. It was exactly true. We didn't have. Hoarders need places to put things. Well, my brother had the places. He lived out in the country. He had a ranch style house that was about 1,800 square foot with a full basement. Every room, and I mean every room, including the bathrooms, were completely filled. The widest aisle in any room we measured was 30 inches wide. And in many of the rooms, stuff was stacked to within 2 to 3 foot of the ceilings of the rooms. He also had on the property a 3-story barn. Every floor of that 3-story barn was completely filled. He also had a hobby store that was about 1,200 square foot. It was completely filled to where you couldn't, towards the end, you couldn't even walk down the aisles or get behind the counters. What you're going to see here now for a couple of pictures is a picture of this hobby store and what happens when a hoarder gets to the point to where they get completely, totally overwhelmed with stuff. This is a picture of one of the more organized parts of the hobby store, believe it or not, there. To most of us, it looks like utter chaos, and it was there, but he actually did business out of this store on a weekly basis. This is a picture that I took that I thought was very interesting. These are all DC transformers, not DCC, obviously. They're all DC. I think there was between 200 and 300 of them in this cabinet here. Why did he ever have that many? Because he was a hoarder. They were for sale for $1 a piece, and he never sold any there. But that shows you, that's kind of a good picture of what happens with the hoarding disease. Here's 2 pictures behind the counters in this store. This is inside of a store that he had in Omaha there. You literally could not walk down the aisle there. So I think we can all agree that's probably a pretty serious case of hoarding that you're looking at there. And there's some, if we really took the time, and I don't want to necessarily do that here, but if we took the time and we went through these pictures, you would see some serious collector's items. Just in the picture on the right hand, just look up in the upper left-hand corner of the right hand. Those are 2 complete, brand new, never out of the box American Flyer sets up there. Those are not nickels and dimes. Okay, let's talk about stuff that was sellable and the stuff that I threw away from this estate. This is just a very, very, very small sampling of stuff that we were able to sell. In the house, we found 150 guns. We got 4 compound hunting bows. A lot of them were brand new.
Stop.
Ask them if they're
Just keep
Okay.
going.
okay. 150 guns, 40 compound hunting bows, 4,000 Hot Wheel cars, and percentage of those were collector pieces. 3,000 pieces of Lionel, many collector's pieces inside that 3,000 pieces. 6 O scale, not O gauge, O scale big boys, never out of the boxes. 4 Challengers, never out of the boxes. There were numerous large and rare original railroad signs. I'm talking about signs that would be 6 foot in diameter or bigger than that. And he even had on the property a full-size semaphore in the yard there. So that's just a small idea of what we sold. Here's a sampling of what, just give you an idea of what I threw away. I dismantled and trashed 5 layouts that he had on the property. 61.4 tons of stuff was hauled to the dump. That was when I got the bill from the company that put the dumpsters on the property. They billed me for 61.4 tons of stuff. There's a Menards has stores in Omaha. They're like a Home Depot or a Lowe's. I completely bought out 2 of the Menards of black trash bags. I bought every black trash bag they had in 2 of the stores' inventory because we needed them to put stuff in there. Oh, just a side note to this that I don't have on here, but I think it's worth knowing. I hired a professional company that takes care of hoarding, that cleans up hoarding. They charged me $3,000 per day. Not $3,000 per week, $3,000 per day. And it took them 41 days to clean up the properties. So you can do the math. The stuff that we could sell, I rented a 20,000 square foot auditorium. We held 16 auctions. And in 2011, when all this was going on, I slept more nights in a hotel room in Omaha than I did in my own bed out here in Colorado. I basically lived in Omaha for 2011. There's the building that I rented to hold the auction in there. Now, the next set of pictures is going to show you the stuff that we sold, the things that we sold. This is inside the room. This building is about 200 feet long, approximately. And those are 8-foot tables that you see put end to end. And there were 5 rows of tables going 200 feet, the length of this auditorium there. We held, when I say we held 16 auctions, let me be clear about that. We actually held 8 auctions in this building, but we had 2 auctioneers. One would start at one end, other one would start at the other end, and they would go through the property. Well, that actually counts as 2 auctions when you have 2 auctioneers. So technically we held 16 auctions in this building over a period of about 3 months. We were doing auctions every week there, and then we had to stop because some of the same people would come to the auctions each weekend, and they ran out of money. We had to stop, let them wait a couple of weeks to get some paychecks in their hands, and then they come back. But this is how we set up the room on a Friday night. Then the auctions were Saturday. The tables were completely emptied on Saturday. We refilled the tables for Sunday. By Sunday night, the tables were empty again, and then they were refilled the next day again. This went on again for about 8 weeks. And this will just give you an idea of some of the stuff. And when these boxes that you see, the boxes that have multiple stuff in them, those were sold as a box. You bought the complete box. You bid on the complete box is what you did. Anybody need a water tower? We had a few water towers there and that. And some of those are collector's pieces. Some of those are Lionel stuff that was pretty good. The 3,000 pieces of Lionel, that the major parts of it all went back to Indiana, to a company called Stout Auctions. And Stout Auctions sold the majority of the Lionel stuff. And it took them 4 auctions. And I was able to recoup, Stout got me about just over $100,000 for just the Lionel stuff that was there. Okay, that was my brother. Now, for 10 years, I was what was called my title was the estate coordinator for the Northern Colorado Model Railroad Club there. My job included when somebody would pass away, my job included inventorying every piece that was in the estate, pricing every piece for sale that was for sale at an estate sale, setting up and managing the estate sale, advertising the estate sale, presenting the estate with a check from the proceeds that we got, and then liquidating items that didn't sell. That was my job for about 10 years. And I done somewhere between, maybe 10 and a dozen estates over that period of time. And these were people that were members of the club that passed away, or someone that we had known through the club, and I handled the estate for them there. Sable disease. Everybody that's watching this tonight, or almost everybody, has this disease. And I think everybody's guilty of this, in my opinion. What is it? Stuff acquired beyond life expectancy. I'm not talking about the life expectancy of the stuff. I'm talking about your life expectancy there. I firmly believe that a pretty decent majority of model railroaders have a little bit of a hoarding issue or a buying issue. They buy lots and lots of stuff. We're all guilty of that. I'm in this group as well as everybody. But you think about that, stuff acquired beyond life expectancy there. We think we need stuff. This is one of our problems. We think we need it. We acquire way more stuff than we need. We buy beyond what we model. I think everybody can relate to that. We don't think beyond our life. And probably we shouldn't, but we don't. And we overestimate our life expectancy. And this is why we end up with situations like my brother's on a massive scale. Okay, I think that gives you an idea of I've done enough of this in different areas that I kind of know hopefully I know what I'm opining about here. What do we all need to do? Okay, what I'm going to do with this part of the program is I'm just going to go through and kind of give you guys some ideas of what you need to be thinking about and actually doing. You've got to inventory. when I put inventory, that's exactly what I mean. You need to keep track of what you're buying. Why is that? One of the estates that I did for one of our club members that passed away, he didn't even have a layout. He just bought stuff and it was all packaged in boxes. It was really simple to go through and figure out. But it took me 9 Saturdays at 7 hours each Saturday to inventory his estate, which if he would have done it before he passed away, he would have kept track of it as he was buying stuff. I would have saved myself 70, 80 hours worth of work. And that 9 Saturdays was just inventorying. That wasn't putting stickers on stuff, pricing it, or anything like that. When I say you need to direct, what I'm talking about there, and I'll talk about it here in a minute, you need to put directives in place. What do you want done with your model railroad empire when you pass away? You need to tell your loved ones what you want done with it. Do you want to donate it? Which is perfectly fine. I did one about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, where I was able to get the estate $8,000. We'll give you 2 examples here. I'll back up for a second. I did one for a lady where I got her $3,000. The money the $3,000 that I got her was extremely important to her because financially she was not well off at all. The $8,000 one that I did, where I got the estate $8,000 on that sale. That lady donated the $8,000 to a nonprofit company because she didn't need the $8,000. Her estate was such that it would have created tax problems for her. So she actually donated the money to a nonprofit. I want to talk here in a little bit about a big myth about your layouts in your railroads and that. And then I really want to emphasize at the end of this thing, you need to think about your loved ones. You got to quit thinking about yourself. You got to think about the people that you leave behind. Okay, inventory. Take the time to inventory everything. Keep the inventory up to date. That's the most important thing. And that's the hardest thing for people to do. What information is useful? So say somebody like me who's going to sell it at an estate. I need a description of the item, the manufacturer, the SKU number, the purchase date, was it purchased new or used, and what price was paid for it. That's only 6 things, but those are really, really important things to know about. These are the things that I had to kind of go through when I was inventorying these estates that I did and that. And this is what you should do when you're doing estate. Now, for some of our members in our club here in Northern Colorado, I've put together this very simple spreadsheet for them. This is one I did for a good friend of mine who he decided he wanted to start tracking. So I put this spreadsheet together for him, and then he started entering all the data into it and that. And this is very basic, but it's information that really helps when you have to get rid of the estate. While I was the estate coordinator for the club, I was obligated to keep certain records about the estates and what I inventoried, what we sold, how we sold it, things like that. So what I actually did is I put together a computer program, an estate database program, and this is what I used to inventory when someone had passed away. This was simply what you're seeing here is the opening screen on that. Here's the screen that dealt with the contact information, the estate information, the primary, secondary contacts, and things like that. This is just information that I would put into the program. The meat of this program, the serious part of this program, is this screen here, which is where each and every item got entered in, and each and every one of those fields got filled if I had the information. The fields on the left are the information fields. The fields on the right are the valuations that I was determining. And then the bottom was the sell prices, what things sold for and that. And then The last thing that you had to do is we had to do reports, because if people were donating and giving things, they had to have tax reports and that. So the program generated reports and that. And again, this was my own thing that I used when I was doing it. For you guys, a simple spreadsheet would work great. Directives, and I think this is super important. You need to leave directories, as I said earlier, is what you want done with your layout. Very, very few modelers do this. I don't know. I've heard numerous people tell me, well, excuse me. They'll say, when I'm dead, I'm going to let them worry about it. Well, I think that's a pretty selfish motive. I think that's not being a good person if you do that. Examples of directives. Are there items that you want specific individuals to have? Are there items you want to donate to an organization? The biggest problem is the bench work. What should you do with the bench work? What should be done with the scenery? You'd be amazed. It's not really that hard to get rid of the rolling stock and all that stuff, but the bench work is a pain. It's terrible, and probably out of those dozen estates that I took care of, I think almost all of them, the bench work was given away or was taken to a dumpster and put in a dumpster. There has no value. Here's the big myth, and this is my own opinion, but it's from many, many years of doing this and that. People who don't leave directives often say, give it to some young person who would enjoy it. That, in my opinion, that's really wishful thinking. Why do I say that? I can almost guarantee you there's better than a 50-50 chance the young person doesn't model your era. The younger generation, and I can speak from my track design business, almost all of them do modern era. Why? Because they grew up with it. If you're modeling transition era, they ain't interested. They don't care. And as I put on here, to bluntly put it, they're not interested, even if it's for free. So don't think that it's going to be easy for your heirs just to give it away to somebody. I can tell you from experience, it doesn't work that way. Some final thoughts here that I've got. The biggest gift that you can give your heirs is a directive spelling out exactly what you want done with your model railroad empire. Please put yourself in their place. They don't understand the hobby. They have no idea what things are worth. Without directives, they have no idea what you wanted done, all adding up to stress that they're already feeling because of your death. And as far as I'm concerned, most important, people will take advantage of your relatives when you're dead. I've seen it happen many times. I'll give you just one example of that. We had a president in our club who, at a meeting one night, made the announcement that good old Joe had passed away, and his wife wants to get rid of his stuff. I got there this was announced on a Thursday. I got there on a Sunday to look at what he had to decide what to do with it. 4 of our club members had already been there and basically had raped the inventory. They had picked out the items they wanted, which was the good stuff, and they underpaid the widow what it was really worth. After that happened, the rules I had when I did estates for the club was I would tell the heirs of the estate, the widows and the kids, no one talks to you, no one comes in this house unless I give the okay. And I thought we had a club that had a bunch of good guys in it, but the club's 100 people, and there was a certain small percentage that were good guys. Okay, this is the magazine that Bill talked about earlier, the Modeler's Journal. this is the magazine I write for JD 4 times a year. The article that we were talking about here, you can't take it with you, is in this magazine. The magazine's free, you don't have to pay anything for it. I go into much greater detail in the article in the magazine than I could do here tonight on that. So I think it's a good read. I think it's something everybody should read. And this magazine that JD is doing here is and I'm a little partial because I'm involved in it. It's a hell of a magazine, guys. JD's doing a really good job. And just to kind of to whet your appetite a little bit, that model that you see on the cover, if you haven't already gotten the magazine, if this is the first time you're seeing this picture, that boat, that ship is paper. It's not plastic, it's not wood, that's built out of paper. So that might pique your interest a little bit. Now, what I'd like to do for the rest of the show is I'll be more than happy to try to answer some questions if people have questions. I could do a whole book on my brother's estate. I could do a whole story on that if we wanted to. But I just think this is an important subject. It's something all of us should think about. Bill, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Okay. Sure.
Well, I have
No,
something. This is not just another pretty face, you know. I can think. I wanted to ask you, Bill, in regards to this estate planning. Would it be advantageous to get a lawyer as you were doing, like a health proxy and getting your will and testimony, to have somebody to include this in this?
I would say only on the big estates, and I guess that's kind of a leading answer. What's a big estate? What is considered big? This is something I didn't talk about in the program because the numbers can vary across the country. It only pertains to out here in Colorado. But my experience has been that unless it's a very unusual piece, a collector's item, if it's just a run-of-the-mill piece that was bought off of a shelf in a hobby store, or you ordered it from Walthers or whomever there, regardless of what it's sold for, at an estate sale, you can expect that product to bring anywhere between 10 and 20% of its retail value. There, maybe 25% if it's kind of a really nice piece. If it's a collector's item, yeah, then all bets are off. It could go as high as 50%, or it could sell for the full retail if it was something that's been discontinued. That's hard to say, but generally, most of the estates, the estate where I got the gal $8,000 on that estate, that was an estate that had very high quality product in it. There was no junk in that inventory at all. The total value of the estate was right at about $48,000 there, and I got her $8,000. But the only reason I got her $8,000, I should have only gotten her probably maybe $6,000. But there was good product. There was good stuff in it.
How, and I know these are. How can you find someone who does what you do? I mean, how would someone like if my wife needed to find someone who knew what model railroading was and to give her an appraisal and to say, okay, I can help you with this. That's question number one. And if she did, after finding this person, what's the average price that the adjuster or appraiser would charge for his end of?
Well, those are really good questions, and unfortunately, I can't answer them for this reason. First one is it's really hard to find somebody who does what I do.
Once again, we are having technical difficulties. All right, Bill Baronic temporarily batting down on us, not on purpose, but due to on his end, they're changing over the high-speed connection actually in his town. This town of Fort Collins has taken it over. So right now they're in an interruption. His modem seems to blank out, and then 2 minutes later it kicks in. But tonight's show is basically about you can't take it with you. We thought it was a pretty good show. I mean, a pretty good idea for a show because I read an article in Model Journal magazine that just came, the April-June issue that just came out, and Bill Baronic wrote an article called "You Can't Take It With You," and basically it is what do you do after you pass away with your loved ones left with all your content, all your equipment, all your layout, basically. What if nobody's into model railroading? What should they do with it? Bill came aboard, and he just to give you a recap of it, he was in the jewelry business for over 42, 45 years, and he did appraisal of jewelry, and he worked with insurance companies as well as banks and financial institutions to give back some, on what they could do in appraising jewelry that's been lost, damaged, or stolen. And he did it at his club where he would do with women, widows, if you will, whose husbands passed away, and they were given, he was given the task of, assembling an inventory for them and then trying to get the best market price for them. And basically what Bill's saying, what he said tonight in the overall content of this show of Who's Big Bill Talking To, was that it's an eventuality. It's not a question of if we pass away, but when we pass away, do we have things in line for our model railroad? I'm sure most of us out there have our life insurance intact. We also have health insurance and an estate set up where our loved ones will benefit monetarily and keep them secure. But then, as Bill suggested and stated in his message tonight, what do you do with the railroad? And in doing, you have to protect your loved ones in this matter. And Bill brought out a couple of good points where he said the model railroader tends to think, well, we'll give it to some young person who's into the hobby. And he stated that on the majority, a lot of young people don't want this. And even if you gave it away for free, they wouldn't take it. And then there's always those that know the modeler and are modelers themselves and might come around and pilferage and lowball the widow because she's in a state of shock, anxiety, and she just wants to get rid of the stuff. So that's what we recapped. And I was just asking Bill a question in regards of how you would find somebody who would come in and do an appraisal and what would an appraisal cost. And Bill was in the process of answering when he ran out of gas.
Try to kind of go over it again. It is hard. If somebody's in the business, if they're a professional appraiser, well, like when I was in the jewelry business and I was working with those trust departments of those banks, well, it was jewelry. I'd spent 40 years in the business. I knew jewelry and that on it. And there was a lot of people that did what I did. And yes, I charged a fee to the bank based on, it was an hourly fee that I charged them. For our club out here in Northern Colorado, I did this gratis. I did this as a gift. First to the widow, if it was one of our members who had passed away, I did this to help the widow out. And while we did with they would always ask, what do you owe? And I would say, let's get it done. Let's get it finished. Let's get everything sold. We'll give you a check for 100% of everything that we sold. You decide if you want to donate back to the club, what you want to donate. And just to give you an idea of how varying that can be, as I said earlier in the program, the one I did for the lady that was financially in some fairly serious shape, she gave $75 to the club as a donation. Okay.
Better than a stick in the eye.
But that $75 was super, super important to her. That was a big thing. The one I did where I got the lady, I did one where I got about 7,600. That's what it was. $7,600 is what we sold. That lady lived in almost $1 million house. So money was not an issue with her. She turned around, out of the $6,700 that I gave her a check for, she turned around and wrote me a check to the club for $1,600. Okay. And that's what she felt it was worth to have me come in and do that for her.
Sure,
I never took a dime for it.
A varying degree.
Yeah, it depends on the person. I mean, I don't care how many of these I would do, you'll never do two of them that are exactly the same. And really all we're trying to do here, Bill, is I know it's a subject that a lot of guys don't like to talk about, something they don't think about, they don't want to think about. But I watch these widows when I walk in the door. Think about the hobby that I think is really interesting. Well, I would talk to these widows and I would gain their confidence and their trust and everything. And a lot of them would say to me, I have no idea what he was doing down there. All I know is he was home every night in the basement. And that's all I cared about. So he said, and I got that answer more times than, probably every time I get the answer. One of the things that I always did with the widows, and I was absolutely true. I'm patting myself on the back here, but I think it helped ease their mind. I told every widow or every family member that I don't want anything that's in that basement. There's nothing in that of his inventory that I want. So I'm here to protect your interest. I'm not here looking at my own interest. And that, that's where you got to be careful. Who do you let into your house?
It's very true.
Who's going to come in on that? I would say simply this, Bill, to answer your question in a very long answer, go to a model railroad club that is locally somewhere in the area. That's got to be your best bet. There's going to be a few bad apples in that club, but I always would think in myself, the people that are running the club, the people that are managing the club, if the club's been around a long time, it didn't get mismanaged and everything. So that'd be some good people to talk to.
Sure. And I agree with that. I do agree with that. And, it is, I think as model railroad is, I think it's, we look out for our family, regardless of what stratosphere financially you're in, upper, middle, lower, you try to benefit and do something for your family, knowing that you're going to, life insurance, like I said earlier. But it really does make sense for you to take care of this end of the spectrum of business. It's fun for you. It's a hobby for you, for the model railroader. You enjoy it, but how many times has your loved one, your wife or anybody, they come in, they look, hey, it's really great. They're not really interested in it. They're not going to pursue it or come back, So
that's right.
It behooves you, as a responsible person, to put things in place for your family and for the estate wise. So this way they're not left with the burden and the responsibility because all the work you put into it and all the work that you have, it would really truly be a shame to your loved one to call a cleaning company and say, toss it.
Yeah.
Just throw it in. You put that work in there, she'll gain a little interest from it, a little coin from it. It may not be much, but it may be just enough to hold a celebration party of your life at Duffy's tavern or something,
Well,
and things like that. I mean, I know the deal. We all want to go to heaven, but none of us want to die to get there.
that's right.
And as much as we're saying it's eventuality, it is an eventuality. It is a reality.
That's right.
So
It does happen.
right, and I do hope that this. Again, I hope that this show tonight with Mr. Baranek, aka the track planner, was beneficial to you when you watch this again. And I do hope that you do watch it and take it seriously, because it is an important part of our model railroading life, even in our afterlife. If we are not here to enjoy it, at least our families will benefit from the hard work that we put into this.
And maybe, Bill, if you have me back sometime, we'll talk about a much happier subject.
I think this is, Bill, I have to interject, and I have to disagree with you on this. It's a happy subject. Death is the final veil that we pass through, and no one knows. Whatever your belief system is, whatever it is, it's the final veil that none of us know what happens. No one's ever come back and complained, so it must be a good place, wherever it is. I mean, I know where it is, but I'm not going to proselytize now on the thing. But I think that right now what we have here is, it's a joyful, it's a celebration. Look around what you have and look around at what you've completed and what you want to share in when you're gone. It's a legacy. I know that when Jim passed away, he had a lot of stuff that he gave away. And I have to tell you that I myself have a few of his cars on my thing. Wally, Todd Walton, who recently passed away, I have the privilege of having a few engines that he weathered. And it struck me the other day when I was running some trains that a couple of the cars on the line were from Jim and from Walter. So there is something, we all have a liking, a love for our friends, and eventually they have to leave us.
Well, what I used to do with the widows is when we would establish that, yes, I'm going to do this estate, I'm going to inventory and everything. First thing I would say to them is I would say, between today when I'm here in your home and next week when I come back to start the inventory, I want you and the family to go downstairs, and I want you to take out anything that you want. Anything that was dad's or grandpa's or whatever that you want to have, get it, take it out of there. Because when I walk back in the room on Saturday and I'm going to assume that everything I touch and everything I see is going to be sold. And we need to get rid of it. You'd be surprised at how many of those people said, I want the grandkids to have an engine from their grandpa there just to have it. They don't like trains, but we can just say it's from their grandpa. I think that's a great idea. I think that's an absolutely super idea.
Yes.
And then I had one where the gentleman had a super, super good friend of his who was always coming over helping him and everything. And the widow says, I want him to have X things and that. So I said, well, just have him come over and tell him to take whatever he wants. If it's okay with you and you're not concerned about the dollars and cents, just have him come over. I said, I just need, when I walk in the room, what I see, I'm going to inventory and I'm going to sell.
It means so much more. I can tell you for a fact.
Absolutely.
Having Jim's rolling stock, one or two of his cars, and Todd Walton's engines that he weathered for me, it's nostalgic, and it's the person's still with you, even though he's not here in the physical.
The biggest problem we have, I think we have in this is people tend to overestimate the value of their empire.
Well, I can tell you that my empire is worth about millions and millions.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we do. A quick story about in the jewelry business when I was in jewelry, because it kind of encompasses what we were talking about today. I had a mom passed away. It was some customers of ours, but their mother passed away. So the kids come into my store and they brought some jewelry, and I was going through it and appraising it, looking at it, and they handed me this one piece and they said, we know this is valuable. We know this is worth a lot of money and that, because we know when Dad gave it to Mom, and Dad never bought crap. That was the term they said to me, see. So I was looking at the piece and it was just a very run-of-the-mill, no big deal thing, see. Well, you just can't come back to them and say, tell them that, because they've lived all these years with this mindset that this was worth a lot of money. So my father taught me how to handle people. And my father was very, very, very smart. And how I handled it, because my father taught me how to do it, I said to the heirs, I says, did Mom and Dad have a lot of money? And one of the kids pops up and goes, oh no, I can remember when we were growing up, there was barely putting food on the table. I said, okay. I says, at the time that your dad would have bought this for your mother, they were worried more about food than they were jewelry, right? And one of the kids says, yeah, you're probably right. I said, based on dollars back then, not today's dollars, but dollars back then, I says, would have Dad spent $2,000 on this piece of jewelry? And the one kid gave me the best answer I've ever heard. He says, well, he probably would have liked to have, but he couldn't afford to. See? And I says, okay, I says, this is the point. I says, it's worth about $50. I says, what it's worth. But I says, it's a sentimental value you can't put a price on. And I says, the $50 means nothing. It's what is it worth to you guys? But I says, I don't want you living under the impression that you've got something here that you don't have. And they appreciated that when it was all said and done. But for years and years, how many decades had they thought, boy, Dad really thought a lot about Mom. I thought a lot of Mom, and he bought her this very expensive ring. No, they were buying food. They weren't buying rings.
Yeah, the value of it is intrinsic, only based on what it's the value to
Sentimental value.
And your family.
This is the problem for the insurance companies that I worked with, is the insurance company's obligation, and I've gone through this thousands of times. Lots of people don't understand when they lose something or something gets broken or lost, and say it's a piece of jewelry. If you have the right kind of insurance, that's the first thing you got to do, is you got to have the right kind of insurance. But if you've got the right insurance, the insurance company's obligation is to put you back with like kind, like quality. No better, no worse there. And I was very, very honest with those insurance companies, because I would have customers once in a while that would want me to write appraisals that weren't right.
Sure.
I wanted to give them money. I refused to do it because the insurance companies trusted me. I did a lot of business with the insurance companies, and I was honest with them. And I had customers get mad at me. And I says, look, it's not my fault that you didn't buy the right insurance. You had to buy the right insurance.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, thank you, Bill, so much for being on with us and discussing this topic. I hope that those who watch it afterwards, and I do apologize out there to our viewing audience that we did have glitches. It wasn't anything that was on our end, and I'm not copping out to it or throwing anybody else under the bus. It truly was on YouTube and on the internet. We did what we had to do, but we couldn't basically get it streaming to the other contractors that were involved in this. So we do apologize for that and for this inconvenience. We didn't waste your time because it's being recorded, and I'm sure that it will be intact and that you'll be able to see it in its entirety in the next hour or two, or tomorrow, or at your leisure, which I do hope you do watch. And if you do watch, we would here at Model Railroading Live would appreciate it if you could. I know that it's not something normally that you would do, but if you could leave a comment on this particular program, on what you thought about it, and if it had affected you in a good way or not such a good way, or what your thoughts were. We would appreciate that. With that said, I want to thank Mr. Baranek again for his willingness to come aboard. And do yourself a favor, get that Model Journal magazine. It's a free subscription, free to all and everyone. And if it's free for me, it's a good thing. So get it, and you can read Mr. Baranek's article in depth, and you can also read about that ship that's on the cover. You'd be surprised that it's actually made of paper. I didn't believe it myself until I read it. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, yours truly will be back in Johnny's Train Talk room. I'll be siding up to the old checkerboard and opening it up to anybody who wants to come and challenge me in a game of checkers and to talk about model railroading. If you're interested, you can click on the link and join the chat just like we're doing here. And you can bring up projects that you're working on. If you're having a problem with something that you can't seem to figure out, whether it's electronics, electrically, wheels on your train, whatever, derailment. So just you want to show off your layout or something that you built and you're proud of and you want to just show it off. Tomorrow night, Johnny's Train Talk show at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can come join us. I want to thank John for his due diligence tonight. He really was sweating and breaking his back here to get this all done, and not his fault. He did a heck of a job trying to stream it, pulling all the gadgets, the bells and the whistles out, calling in favors from the Memphis Mafia guys to see if they could help him and stuff like that, but to no avail. But we want to thank John for his due diligence and his hard work that he puts into every show that we broadcast here. So from Model Railroading Live, I'm Bill Graham, and we want to say thank you for watching, because without you, we're just talking to dead air. Take care. God bless, and we'll definitely see you on the radio, guys. Bye-bye.